Namaste, Swagatam.
Namaste.
There are 30 million people of Indian origin spread across 189 countries today, from Mauritius, Fiji, Suriname, Trinidad and Tobago, to Malaysia, Japan, Brazil, and of course, the US, UK, Europe, Australia. How does the diaspora connect with Bharat? How do they keep the emotional bonds alive? What are the challenges, and how has each community circumvented it? The Student's Handbook of History of Indian Diaspora by Professor Dr. Nija Gupta ji, Vice Chancellor, Gujarat University, is a good starter for those keen on this subject of diaspora Indians. Meanwhile, let us speak with Dr. Indrani Rampersad ji to know more. Dr. Indrani Rampersad is a fourth generation person of Indian origin, born in Trinidad, West Indies, who is grounded in Sanatana Dharma. She did her BA at the Banaras Hindu University, Masters and PhD in Communication and Journalism from the University of Pune. She's an educator, a journalist, and a women's advocate who has lived and worked in Trinidad and in New York. Dr. Indrani ji is Trinidad's first state certified pandita. In 2013, she received the Government of Trinidad and Tobago's National Award for outstanding contribution to the development of women in the category of religion and community. Dr. Indrani ji's research focuses on Hindu culture and Ramayana traditions in the indentured diaspora, particularly the Ramalila of performing the Ramacharitra in North India, in Trinidad, in Guyana, Suriname, Fiji, and Mauritius. She was a senior research fellow in Ram Leela studies at the University of Trinidad and Tobago and has published in encyclopedias, journals, and books. As a member of the Research and Education Committee of the Ayodhya Research Institute, India, she has initiated and collaborated on several global training workshops on Ramalila related skills. Indraniji is currently the visiting professor at Bharat Adhyayan Kendra, BHU, Banaras Hindu University in Varanasi, UP. Namaste, Indraniji. Swagatam.
Namaste. And in
We have
my part of the world, we say Ram Ram Sitaram.
Ram Ram, Ram Ram. Yeah, my apologies. Ram Ram. More appropriate. Thank you so much for making time for being here. We have a few questions for you, Ji. Uh, Indrani ji, before you visited India or Bharat the first time, what were your feelings for Bharat? What did you think about it? What did you hear about it? How did you imagine it to be? Could you please let us know?
Well, in those days, media was not so strong. You didn't have, this kind of media. Even print media, you didn't hear much. We would read about India. I remember my aunts reading Filmfare. I still remember that magazine coming out of Mumbai, I think. And
Yes.
so we women knew a little bit about India through those kinds of that kind of literature that was
Pop
coming
culture.
to us, and we'd hear songs that we could not understand at all, but we could mime and sing, and the bhav was there, but we have lost our ancestral language. But we kept the songs, the bhajans, all those are, we still sing in the original language. So the idea of Bharat, I would say, was one of purity.
Hmm.
We'd look at the movies, the Indian movies, and I distinctly remember, movies those days were very different from the
Family
kind of
dramas. Yes.
ones we see now. Those were very reflective of life in India. And I remember as a young girl thinking and looking at the earth in the movies, and I would say that is sacred earth. that
Oh.
that was my our imagination of what India is, a sacred land for us.
So beautiful. I don't want to put you in a spot, but do you remember any song that you remembered at that time when you were a child, when you hummed, as a child? If you don't remember it, that's totally fine. I was just
Yeah,
curious.
I myself am not too much of a singer, but
No worries. No
we had the
worries.
popular ones of
Sure, sure. No
we had
worries.
the
We'll go
Mother
to the
India ones, and I can't remember by name.
no worries. So, was Sanatana Dharma or Hindu Dharma in when you were in Trinidad conflated with Bharat? The two were, synonymous. Is it so for most people, and in general, not just in Trinidad but in the West Indies? What would you say?
I didn't understand that. Kavita, could you reframe that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Got it.
So when you think of Bharat, and then just now you said that for you it was this pure land, sacred land. So was Hindu Dharma and Bharat, the country, were they conflated? Were they like synonyms for you? Were they one and the same? Is it so for most people in Trinidad that you know of, or is it
Yes.
okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
I would say yes. We do conflate both,
Mm,
um, but it was also the homeland, as it were, for the ancestors.
mm,
They came from here. They remembered India. I remember once interviewing a lady from Tamil Nadu.
mhm,
She was 90 plus, and she was weeping. She'd never been to India. Her mother had come, and she
mm,
was telling me exactly where she came from, and she could tell it in the way that the Indian oral tradition
mm.
recites its ancestral lineage. And she could
Yes.
tell where she came from, and the lineage that she came from. And she was weeping, and she was just, I would say, one generation away. Whereas I, being third and fourth generation away, didn't
Mm,
quite have the same depth of emotion.
mm,
Um, though Bharat was sacred land in terms of dharma,
mm,
but there is that ancestral tie
mm.
that keeps us linked to Bharat. And the most appropriate metaphor that I found is that of the nabhi, the navel that is connected to the child, to
Mm.
the fetus.
The
There's a
umbilical
navel,
cord. Yes.
yes, that is connected to the fetus, that would in turn give birth to Santan.
Hmm.
So we had the connection from the navel that is in there to us, being born in different parts. And I remember Kavita very strong. This was, I was little, and somebody was born in the family. In those days we lived in joint families.
Mhm.
Of course, that's all very rare now. And
Mhm.
I remember a child being born, and the
Mhm.
navel string was buried
Yes.
under a
Yes.
banana tree.
Yes.
Yeah, and I would ask later on about that. Why did you put it under the banana tree? And
Huh.
I was told that it was because the banana tree was so um, giving so much fruit,
Yes. Yes.
throughout the year, and that was the concept of this umbilical cord. And like that, I see it with India, that we too are connected um, in a way, but we are giving birth to that India in different parts of the world, and there is that strong connection.
How wonderful. Because I see this similar custom in the Balinese Hindus. They also bury the umbilical cord under the sacred trees in their family yards because they still live in a joint family. It's so interesting to see how customs have penetrated into cultures, especially among Hindus, even if they are like so far away from one
Right.
another. And I did have a follow-up question to that. A very quick one is, so this umbilical cord is, of course, across religions. So for you, Bharat is the land of dharma or sacred land, but for even, let's say, Trinidadians, second, third generations who are not Hindus, Christians or Muslims perhaps, they have this connection too to the ancestral land, is it?
Well, that was very strong with Muslims and Christians, those who had converted, the Christians and the Muslims, because in fact, the word Hindu
Mm,
was not very strong
mm,
in our identity. We saw Indian.
mm,
We were strong Indian.
mm,
But Muslims knew their identity as Muslim and Islam, and
mm,
Christians knew theirs. But Hindus
mm.
didn't have a strong Sanatana Dharma. They understood Sanatana Dharma, they knew that, but they identified as Indian. So,
Yes.
so yeah, you had, and that identity of the whole community around
Okay.
Indian was very important as a group, as a diaspora community living
Mm,
in a strange land amongst people who were very different. So that brought us all together around an Indian identity, and I think that would begin to change after 9/11.
mhm,
And then you'd find that the Islamic identity began to infiltrate, and we had um, a move towards identifying with the Middle East kind of identity. But we as Hindus were doing that also, in the sense that I remember I was 17 years old when I first wore a sari to go to work. I was a teacher. And I said, you know
Okay.
what? Why shouldn't I wear a sari? Everybody found
Good
me
for
very
you.
strange. But my aunt had come to India. She studied in India in Calcutta, and so
Okay.
she wore saris. And when she came back, we learned,
Uh-huh.
how to
So
wear
she taught you
them.
how to tie it and everything.
Yes, like her. And so I said, that's my identity. And I worked in a very mixed community, an urban community, and everybody welcomed it. It was just that I was different. Um,
Yes.
then then I shifted to Monday to Thursday, Western dress, on a Friday, sorry, because we didn't have that. You could
And
buy.
that happens when you're a smaller community, you're a minority or a diaspora. You want to exhibit your identity, or be proud of it. But what
Yes.
aspects in Raniji matched or did not match your expectations once you landed in Bharat? Because you came to study in Banaras. Was it the 80s or
70s,
70s? And you did your
1973.
BA. Yeah, 70s. Oh, wow. 73. And Banaras, it would have been so
Yes,
different. And
it
could you please,
was.
how was it
That
different from for you, and then you went to Pune after that for your master's. So
no,
one
long after,
question is,
long after
sorry.
that.
Okay, okay, a bit after that. So my question is, one, how was it different from your imagination? And again, how was Pune and Banaras different? Within India, one is from Trinidad. How was Banaras different, and from your imagination? And again, within India, you lived, for some years in Banaras, and then also Pune. So how were those two cities different for you? How did they treat you?
Well, I'd say Banaras was a shock.
Yeah.
Yes, it was a shock in 90s. That was the period that we lived through the hippies
Hmm.
and the miniskirts
Oh, even
and
in
all of that.
Banaras?
No, in Trinidad, I'm talking. Then we lived
Okay,
like, coming through that period
correct. You're coming from the West, yes.
yes. So I thought, well, in India, I'm not going to wear a mini skirt. I would
Hmm,
wear the skirt a little longer, just
hmm,
below the knee.
hmm.
But oh my God, even that was revolutionary in Banaras, because girls didn't wear skirts even
Yes.
there. And well, of course, today I see right across the board, it's fully westernized.
Yes.
And so that was a big shock for me, having to adjust. Uh,
Your whole wardrobe had to be changed. So,
yes, yes, and then the food. I couldn't. The
uh,
food was different, and I first thought, that was just after the war. My
mm,
aunt was in Calcutta during the war, actually,
mm,
and so we had an image of a very poor India,
mm,
of an India that didn't have food and so on because of the war, of course.
mm, mm.
And then when I came, I saw the girls like eating one chapati and a piece of achar, and I said, "Oh my God, there is no food here." Until I tasted the chapati, and it was all stuffed with. It
It's
was not.
heavy.
It was paratha, stuffed paratha, and so
Yes.
on until So you get a change and
Hmm,
language. Of course, I stayed in my room for 2 weeks without going outside in
Oh,
Banaras. I
oh,
was so afraid. I said, nobody's going to understand me here, and I
huh,
don't understand anybody because
oh.
I didn't know a word of Hindi.
Oh, you didn't speak Hindi then? Okay.
No, there
Okay.
was no. We have lost our
You were
language, ancestral
saying, yes.
language.
So
Yeah.
it was only
So
English in
mm,
Trinidad?
yeah,
Mostly
only
English?
English
Hmm,
from my side. But the most compassionate teacher that I met, she was the head of department
hmm,
of geography department where I was doing my honors, and uh, she could speak English well,
hmm,
um, and she would teach me separately.
hmm,
Yeah, and the others I would of course struggle and learn on my own
hmm.
with English text. But I've never forgotten. Hempriya Devi is her name. I honor her. Yeah,
Yes.
whenever I pass by in Banaras where she used to live, I always send a prayer.
Oh,
wherever that Atman resides, may it
yes.
continue to flourish. She was such a wonderful human being.
Good
And
for you.
it was only later, and
Hmm.
I remember whenever I'd come back to Varanasi, I'd go visit her. And then
Hmm.
one day she said, come, and she took me to her little puja room and
Hmm.
sat me down. And then she said, when her daughter comes back
Hmm.
to her home, this is the puja that we do. And
Oh.
she said she really treated me, and I felt wanted. I felt part of my tradition, but she was not. I would later understand she was not Hindu. She was communist rather.
Oh,
I would
okay.
later understand that, but I never
Yes,
felt
there's a lot of
any.
shades of Hindus. Yes.
Yeah, and those who were Sanatana Dharma and Hindu didn't welcome me that much. There was a distance,
Wow.
and there still is a distance with
Ah,
Hindus,
ah.
as though I don't know the blockage is why, but we still have a blockage between the people of India and the
Ah.
people in the diaspora. And currently, there's a debate going on in Guyana about
Mhm.
this, where they say they feel they are the Sautalia, the stepchildren of Bharat.
Oh.
Even now, they are saying that that Bharat treats them like that because
We should talk more about this, Indrani ji. I will come back to this. This is an important discussion, and we must,
sure.
talk in detail. Thank you for bringing that up, and I'm happy to hear of your wonderful experiences from so long ago, and with your head of the department. But you have returned to Bharat again. To do masters in Hindu studies in Banaras, again in BHU, and now you're a visiting professor over there. So, what are the current trends apart from the westernization of clothes that you've observed in 2024? Some of which have delighted you, and some not so. And what would you like to change about the things there? Not in the campus per se, but in Banaras, because you've been there in the 70s and now you've come back after so many decades.
Well, I've been on the Ghats, the Asi Ghat. I'd like to remove the pizzeria sign on the Ghat. We really need to have India needs to pay more attention to its heritage
Mm,
retention and protection.
mm,
All these tiles and so on in Mandirs don't
mm,
add to the heritage.
mm,
They don't sync. They're not in harmony.
mm,
Well, thank God the banks of Ganga still
mm,
looks very similar, even with the modern changes, which is welcome. The
mm.
hygiene was horrible in the 70s, a little better now, but still room for
Growth.
improvement. Um, and I would say that part of India I still look forward to, but I don't want the whole of India to be because of my memory. My
Mm.
my my thing is memory and remembering that part. But sure, you got to move on, and that's where I met Modi ji, at Banaras Hindu University
You
when
met
I
him.
was there. Yes,
Okay.
yes. So
Yeah.
he was a family friend. My brother was very close to him, and
Uh-huh.
those days boys and girls don't talk, so he
Yes.
only knows me as little Indrani, little Rani. He knows me as Rani, little
Okay.
sister. So,
Huh.
and I'm
You're the
glad that
Choti
he's
Behan.
now. Yeah, I'm glad he's now in charge of Varanasi. But
Yes.
I wish I could tell them a little more. Some of what I've seen in 73 is still there and could be
Mm,
improved, and so the improvements I've seen. Banaras is a living
mm.
place that takes you into another realm, and
Yes.
we got to protect that. I don't see the sadhus as
Oh.
many as I used to. I don't see the cows. I
Mhm.
miss the cows also in recent times. I'd see one or two, but
Mm.
maybe it's good not to have the cows running around on the street.
But not seeing
It's
sadhus is not a good sign in Raniji, right? Because even in other cities, we used to have sadhus come for bhiksha, and I don't hear them. I mean, in Hyderabad, where I live, I don't see sadhus at all, which is
yeah.
very sad. Yeah, it is
So
one of the ashramas.
somebody was saying they go to like the Ayodhya and Haridwar
Mhm.
and where these places. I don't know,
Mhm.
but I miss them because
Mm.
they really give and the
Mhm.
cows tell me about the sensitivity of Indians and the compassion, because
Mm.
no Indian, they'll
Mm.
make way for the cow.
Mm.
They'd stop and make way for the cow, which tells you the compassion. So
Mm.
that for me, looking on, is a good thing, and I like to see. within the chaos
Hmm.
of the traffic and so on, there's
Hmm.
space for everybody. And
Hmm.
that is a metaphor for me for India's diversity, how everybody can find a space
Hmm.
in the madness,
That is
that is
India.
diversity.
Yeah. And did you feel that in Pune when you went to Pune? Was it another kind of a surprise or a shocker because Banaras was so different from your imagination? And then this is another language, another state. How hard was it over there for you? Because you did your PhD also, that so many more years over
Yes,
there.
yeah, I did my master's and PhD there. Pune was, I wrote an essay and I said to them, I swore somebody sent them to kill me on these streets. Drivers, I've never seen such driving in the whole of India.
This was
There's so
80s or the 70s only? Same
80s,
70s.
80s.
80s. Okay.
And there was, I mean, was so,
Rough driving.
driving was mad. And I haven't, that affected me. And of
Uh-huh.
course I didn't, well, by the time I got to learn a little Hindi,
Uh-huh.
one, two, three, four, and then I'm waiting for the bus to go to college, and I'd have to figure out, is that a one or is that a nine? Because in Marathi,
Hindi.
they look similar. And by the time I'm figuring that out, the bus goes away. So I don't know whether it's a one or a nine, and the bus goes away. So we had some fun times. I love the food. I
Uh-huh.
love the food. Of course, it's a very you know
All the
appetisable way.
sabudana and all the poha, you love that. I love it too. Yes.
Yeah, I love. And I first thought, oh my God, Indian women um, don't cook at home or what? Because all of the Indian women I'm seeing eating also, and it was such a culture of eating outside that I was not
Mhm.
accustomed to.
I think Maharashtra maybe was forward in that sense, Bombay, Pune. In
Yeah.
Hyderabad, definitely, or at least in our families, we didn't eat out till like, 15, 20 years ago, like after the mid
Yes.
90s. It was
Yes.
frowned upon, and even in trains, you carried your own food, and everybody,
Yes.
all communities, everybody carried their own food. So maximum you'd have a chai outside, but eating out was, yeah, frowned upon.
Yeah.
But now, of course, it's just the opposite. You don't find very many youngsters cooking, men or women. So it's just the opposite.
Yes.
But
Yes.
could you please tell us about your growing years in Trinidad? Because when you say you found the women eating out and that was strange for you, so I'm trying to understand how Trinidad was, how the families were. So what was it growing up Hindu in Trinidad for you?
Well, we grew up in a kind of mixed urban society, semi-urban, that we had blacks also, Africans together with Indians. But what was our our what you say the anchor that we Hindus had was the Hindu school. By that time, the government had agreed to have denominational schools, Hindu, Muslim, Christian, because they already had Christian before. We walked into a Christian hegemony. By the time we got into the, it was all Columbus with the Christianity and so on. So the institutions were all Christian hegemony kind of power.
Hmm.
So these schools really helped us with our identity. And it was very normal because the area was kind of, you had settlements after the sugarcane uh, plantation. The workers on the sugarcane, then they'd be resettled nearby
Hmm.
the sugarcane plantations. So they were fairly homogeneous, fairly, not fully, they were also a little mixed, but they were fairly Indian. So
Okay.
you had that numbers that,
Hmm.
and then you could celebrate your festivals together with each other. But the school was an important institution for transmitting. We do our prayers every day. Up to that time, just several Hindu school will sing the national anthem of Bharat.
Acha.
Yeah, it would be recited
Janagana
because
Mana you sang.
yes,
Oh.
yes, because we were not yet independent nation. In 1962 we became independent.
Uh-huh.
So before that, the Hindu schools would sing, and the Bharat national anthem even took the form of a bhajan
Oh.
in the mandir. So you
Acha.
go to the mandir, they would sing it like a bhajan.
Jana
Yeah,
Gana like
yes,
that.
yes.
Oh.
Not understanding, it's a you got to stand up and da da da. They sang it.
I'm
Assuaging.
getting
That's
goosebumps. Oh my goodness.
yeah,
Wow.
that's how we kept how we transformed and
Ah.
so growing up in those years, it was uncomplicated.
Hmm.
Everybody around you was similar. People dress and so on. English, we were all English speaking by then. My grandparents spoke Bhojpuri,
Hmm.
but they never taught it to us. They said to move ahead in the society, you got to know English,
Hmm.
and so that's how we lost the language.
So, were you filled with any kind of anger, rancor, or self pity? So many unresolved emotions that the diaspora has to deal with. How did you assuage this sense of loss or pain of parting from one's motherland, even though it was fourth generation and not as strong, let's say, of, you were speaking of this person who was, a second generation and so connected to India, but you are fourth generation, a bit more removed. But there must be some sense of loss or pain. And how do you
Yeah,
deal with it?
there is that trauma. There is that generational trauma of loss. But um, I've dealt with it through the Deshkal or
Mm,
Paristithi concept
mm,
that and creativity.
mm,
And we are very proud now to say that
mm,
I am a Caribbean Hindu.
mm,
I am a Trinidadian Hindu. I do not have to hang on to the identity of India because the India Hindu identity is different in
mm,
many ways to my Hindu identity. And we don't feel any lesser now.
mm,
Before we used to feel lesser because you think Bharat is the pure image to be emulated.
uh,
And until you come here and you realize, hello, half of
sorry.
them don't even know Gayatri Mantra, it's not the same.
Huh,
And so we have in the diaspora evolved strategies for
mm,
holding on to the past and adapting to the present and taking our children into the future in a very
mm,
a way that is healthy,
mm,
mentally healthy. So the
mm,
children of today, you will see crossover music, for example.
mm,
Trinidad, the Caribbean, very well known for crossover music between the Indian folk songs that we still keep, and
mm,
they change the rhythm and so on, and they even have the Jamaican reggae kind of beat
mm,
and style,
mm,
and so slowly our Indian identity is being accepted
mm.
by the others who are not Indian, of African origin, and so and slowly we are melding into a kind of respect
Wonderful.
that this is mine, and I am mixed. I am mixed in the sense that I have I have influences from
Mm.
all in my external environment. My internal environment is there, but externally I have influences which you can't ignore, and we have tremendous strategies that
Mm.
people have evolved that needs to be studied.
Yes, and it's wonderful that you're all owning up to that, and there is pride in the heritage. And you were talking about the Hindu diaspora in Trinidad keeping their civilizational memory. For example, singing the Janaganamana and the Indian anthem in as bhajans in temples. So, could you tell us about the Hindu temples over there? Was it easy to build temples and or to have pujaris to conduct pujas? Did you follow all the 16 samskaras or just the vivaha? Like trying to understand what are the rites that are actually observed in Trinidad, maybe in your childhood, and definitely what is observed today.
Well, remember our community was a poor community.
Mm,
We went as workers, so
mm,
we had land and we were building. People, that was a period of building community life.
mm,
Mandirs were not existent until the late 1800s.
mm.
We call them Siwala, meaning Shivalaya. That was
Vivaha.
the dominant one.
Okay.
And mm, we do our pujas at home.
Mm,
I remember we'd have a puja once a year when we'd raise a jhanda.
ah,
The jhanda is a concept that it's a phenomenon I've written about that is
ah,
very unique to the Caribbean region. I've seen it in Fiji also and a little bit in Mauritius, but we've taken it to great heights. That jhanda,
the
after a
flag, you
puja,
mean? Like a
yes,
flag.
a bamboo pole with a
Okay.
flag
Uh-huh.
is raised in
Mm,
victory to the deity you had
mm,
worshipped.
mhm,
So it was first Hanumanji. The
Hmm.
Hanuman Jhanda was the first one that
Hmm.
they would plant in the fields where they go out to work. They'd plant
Hmm.
a Hanuman Jhanda, and then it became like in the families, it became the puja
Hmm.
that the family would do. And they would determine when they would do their pujas, and then pujas went across, like for a birthday, and many of our major rites of passage in
Hmm.
in in um, in life,
Hmm.
we people have a puja,
Hmm.
you know, and
Yes.
even if they'd party afterwards for the birthday, they'd have
But
a
the puja
puja.
will be there. Yes,
Yes.
yes. That's same
So,
here.
so the puja. So if you go to the Caribbean, and even New York, where a lot of Caribbean people live, you'd see these colored flags,
Hmm.
and they were not colored before. In the Caribbean, it emerged into
Hmm.
different colors for different deities. So
Hmm.
the blue one will tell you Shiva puja was done here,
Oh.
and you'd have the yellow, Vishnu lineage. You'd have Shiva, and
Hmm.
so we could tell. And then they started putting pictures on
Hmm.
these, and it's always planted in the northeast of the land. And research shows that's the holy, the
Yes.
sacred spot of the
Puja
land.
room is built there. As per Vastu Shastra, also Northeast is the place. How wonderful
Yes,
that that knowledge is carried all the way there. Wow.
in the folk memory,
Yes.
these were these were the folk people.
Yes. So, and this is interesting because the raising of the flagpoles, again, in Bali, they do that. So, any festivity, the first thing is they raise the flagpole. It's just beautiful, and I'm very
Wow.
excited about all the connections. And you mentioned about the youngsters, bringing this music together, reggae or the bhajan, the folk music or Bollywood. Apart from that, how do they keep in touch with their civilizational mother, that is Bharat? Are they interested, like this generation? Like you said, we claim proudly to be Caribbean Hindus. Is that sufficient? Does that suffice? Or they also have this connection because they are now fifth or sixth generation or much
Yeah.
later? So what do you think about the youngsters now? How do they take pride in being both Hindu and or their identity with Bharat?
Well, I would say, for us it was a collective identity
Hmm.
that we and the society was different. We were not individuals pursuing an individual path. We were part of a family. We were part
Hmm.
of a community. So we did things that way, and I remember, I must share this memory with you. As a young
Please.
girl,
Hmm.
invited to the village as to uh, to a women's party. Well, I say party here, but doesn't
Hmm.
mean party. It's a women's
Gathering.
evening song.
Yeah.
So they had their dholak, and they were
Huh.
singing and dancing, and they asked us to sing and dance,
Hmm.
and we didn't know how. We didn't know how, because we had come from the little urban area,
Yes.
um, and our focus was, we just, and that was a loss that I found, that
Hmm.
we didn't know the movement. We had lost
Hmm.
our movement, and
Hmm.
these other people in the rural area had kept. And I must
Hmm.
mention to you too, it was the what I don't like to use these terms, but it will help India
Hmm.
understand. It was the lower caste
Hmm.
um, groups
Hmm.
that kept the
It's
culture of
stronger.
Sanatana
Yes.
Dharma alive through the
Yeah.
performance tradition.
How beautiful. How
Yeah.
beautiful. And that is a great tradition. Even here, we see that keeping up of all the customs and everything courageously alive and continuous is what people do in the rural areas, and people of various jatis that the British have termed, in a
Yes.
ham-handed fashion. So, like you
Yes.
said, I don't like to mention, certain adjectives. So the jatis who have maintained that are similar in India also. They have maintained those rights, very, very bravely, despite all odds in the onslaught of modernism also, today with OTT and everything. So very commendable. But talking of great souls, SOULS, we come to VS Naipaul. VS Naipaul ji, the great son and of the soil of Trinidad, who brought glory not just to Trinidad but also to India with his exceptional writing and his acute observation. One of my favorite writers. Who are the other literateurs and personalities from Trinidad that Indians or Bharatiyas should know about? because, as you know, we're quite ignorant about things to do with Trinidad. Not all of us know a lot about
Yeah,
Trinidad.
yeah, we have in the Naipaul family. You have several of them who have written also,
Hmm.
and turned out to be good novelists.
Uh-huh.
And you have like Samuel Selvon also, I think, a little bit mixed with Indian.
Hmm.
Um, and the women have started coming out now, and we started writing in the mass media, newspapers. A lot of the journalists are Indians, so you got the writers coming on, and they are also publishing books now. But that
Okay.
field was not very mm, it didn't quite open up until the education of that generation. It would depend on the urban rural divide,
Hmm.
because those of us who were influenced by urban semi-urban
Hmm.
culture,
Hmm.
only then you can begin to write. Though we
Hmm.
told stories and we sang, the different jatis would sing in Bhojpuri and in their traditional songs that came from UPBR. So
Hmm.
that was poetry, and they were composing.
Hmm.
But nobody has looked at that with the eye of creativity, that this is the creative work of
Yes.
women. So,
Yes.
that I would say we still need to have more writers, but for our numbers we're pretty good. I mean, our numbers, we are just like 1.4 million people in Trinidad, and 30% of that is Indian. And the
Wow.
numbers are going down with the Hindus, 20% now, because as we move from the cooperative family lifestyle to
Hmm.
individualism,
Hmm.
you find, and the missionary inroads
Hmm.
being made, uh, and these are mainly from America.
Hmm.
Before that, we had missionaries. You had from Canada and so on, and the Canadian Presbyterians, for example, are very balanced with their Hindu identity.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we have there's a little family community joke that they are
Hmm.
publicly Christian, or when they come home, they are Hindus. To get education, Hindus had to convert.
Hmm.
To be educated, the schools were run, as I told you, by the Christian hegemony, and
Hmm.
to be
You were
educated,
expected to convert. Yeah.
you had to change your name,
Wow.
and you had to become that religion, and to get a job also.
Hmm.
So we have a generation that did that, and then their children. Then you had the upper class kind of feeling that the Christians had over
Hmm.
the Hindus. You know,
Hmm.
so
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 it
that
was.
that
So, yeah. Please go ahead.
yeah. So what I'm saying today, I
Hmm.
find today we are
Hmm.
facing the crisis
Hmm.
of worldview. The
Hmm.
Hindu does not understand
Hmm.
his or her worldview. We
Hmm.
don't know what we believe in.
Hmm.
In simple ways, as Christianity would teach you, as Islam would teach you. It is A, B, C, D.
Hmm.
Otherwise, you go to hell.
Hmm.
And for us, it is such a complicated,
Hmm.
rich
Hmm.
um, uh, narrative,
Hmm.
and different ways of
Yes.
seeing
Of
the
being.
same
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
And we don't, our education, our Western education,
Hmm.
like Indians transcend binaries so beautifully.
Hmm.
Indian, it's sometimes can be frustrating when I ask it, is it a yes or no? Well, it could be this or that.
कुछ भी हो
They
सकता
transcend binaries so
है.
naturally. Whereas
Yeah.
with us now, you're still stuck in binaries, and
Hmm.
we can't figure out who is this thing God. And I've been
Hmm.
trying to tell them we have to stop. And this is where we relied on India, and
Hmm.
India didn't respond
Hmm.
appropriately, because
Hmm.
India itself was
Hmm.
responding to their
Hmm.
colonialism and their
Yes.
post-colonial
Yes.
reconstruction, and
Yes.
and the kind of start they had to that, the ideology that they had was not
Hmm.
conducive to restructuring Sanatana Dharma, either in
Hmm.
India, I would say, or outside, because you had to understand,
Hmm.
there's no word like God for us.
Hmm.
God, what does the thing mean?
Yes.
One book, we couldn't understand one book and nine rules, and so
Yes.
people, yeah. And as you go to school now, you're hearing this, and then the children, the Hindus, will want to know, well, which is my book? I mean, I never heard of Bhagavad Gita until I went
Yes.
back in 1976 from India. Bhagavad
Yes.
Gita then started to
Hmm.
be popular.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we knew what we called Ramayana.
Yeah.
But what you call Ramayana is not what we call Ramayana.
What is that?
Ramcharitmanas is known
Ah.
as Ramayana.
Oh, that's the default Ramayana for you. Tulsidas is
Yes,
Ramcharitmanas. Oh,
yeah,
wow.
it is the text, but for us it is the iconic
Huh.
Ramayana. Nothing supersedes that for the whole community. And of
How
course now
beautiful.
with education and you have Vedanta and so on coming in, and people moving from India to come here to study, and you get a little exchange after the 70s. So
Hmm.
people are now learning more, but one of the major things we've got to do both in India and in the diaspora is
Hmm.
help us understand what is our belief, the three lokas. What do we believe? I mean, do you have no sense of heaven and hell? And we see these ugly pictures that India gives us sometimes of hell with horns. I can't understand where these horns come from. You know, we need to do better. We need to respond now.
Sure, yes. And when you talk about colonialism and the different ways of looking at things, Western or Eastern, when you're mentioning that in the rural parts, the women in Trinidad would sing and they would compose and they would dance, they had the moves, they had the memory, the ancestral memory. And that is creativity also. And when I ask you about literatures and writing, it's a very colonial way because we're trying to write in English, or we're
Yeah.
trying to have an audience which is international, and writing is a different area, and literature in writing is very different from this oral creativity that we have, and that is how we were. That was our cultural way. It was oral, whether it was teaching, guru shishya parampara, whether it's learning dance or music or
Yeah.
anything, it was oral. It was not so much written, and that changes a lot. That changes a whole mindset and perspective, and it can get colonial. So thank you for bringing that out, and I agree with you, Indrani ji. We need to simplify a lot of things, especially about Sanatana Dharma, so the youngsters can connect better and understand who we are. At Brhat, we call it Swayambodh. Pankaj Saxena ji, our founder, he's come up with these three terms. Maybe they were before, but he's made them popular. Swayambodh is who we are, Shatrubodh is who the other is, and this is philosophical, of course. And
Yes.
Saundarya Bodh is the idea of beauty that is inherent in all that the Hindus do. Sanatana Dharma always talks of Satyam Shivam Sundaram. There's always beauty in everything that we do. So I'd like to come to the workshop that you conducted, which was
Kavita,
fabulous.
Kavita,
Ji,
before you move on, I want the concept of aesthetics.
ji, ji,
We
ji, go ahead.
Indians, we in the diaspora do not understand and cannot appreciate our aesthetics.
Hmm.
So that when you look at a Krishna in Orissa style, we don't understand it. We,
Hmm.
we don't understand the concept of darshan
Hmm.
via the paintings, and that concept of aesthetics,
Hmm.
what makes beauty or not in the Hindu world. We need to do that. And please, India, stop using a dictionary to translate our Sanatan
Hmm.
Dharma terms into English. Stop using an English dictionary.
So Rajiv
Please.
Malhotra would be happy. He's written a book on non-translatables, so he'd be happy
Yes,
to hear
Rajiv
you.
has done pioneering work. Actually, we're pretty close. Rajiv,
Okay.
he's done the pioneering work in saying what you should. And when you begin to imbibe those terms in the mind and in the children,
Hmm.
you're going to lose. If you lose your aesthetics, you lose your moorings in your worldview. You're lost, and that's
Yeah.
why so many Hindus are going to the easy, like the fast food path, the
Yes. Yes.
KFC path of Christianity, or the KFC path of, as we would say, of Islam, or the other religions that promise do A, B, C, D, and you reach there.
Or you don't do anything; you just believe, and you're
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
it. You're done.
yeah. And that is the beauty of Sanatana Dharma. We are not believers, and
Yes.
faith is, we are not faith, we are seekers,
Yes.
scientific seekers.
So coming to the workshop, and thank you for bringing that out. And we must work more on the aesthetics part, definitely. And I'm sure most of us here who are listening in on this will. If not, they'll start now. The diaspora workshop in Raniji was such a wonderful brainwave from your end, and you pulled it off so beautifully in the, I think we had 12 sessions or so, and you brought in
16.
people from
Yeah.
16, sorry.
Yeah.
I know I
No,
missed
12
four.
days. 12 days, but 16 speakers.
16, okay, yes, yes, yes. And and you brought in people, diaspora Indians from across the world, and they gave us wonderful presentations. I personally learned a lot. In one of them, they talked about Trinidadian Indian women, Trinidadian women of Indian origin who've become very enterprising, that they were
Yes.
entrepreneurs, started global
Yes.
brands. And
Yes.
could you please talk to us a little about that for the audience?
Yeah, that was him, that Himraj Ramdath, who had
Ji.
written that text on the indentureship,
Entrepreneurship. Correct.
entrepreneurship in this.
Yes.
Yes, our women that went from India from 1845, and in Guyana from 1838, and before that in Mauritius, and so they were enterprising women. We were not middle class women who didn't know how to do this or needed a maid to do this and a maid to do that. These were working class women, and when they got there, the work structure was such that men would work certain hours, women worked less, but and were paid less.
Of course,
And when the
yes.
women would come home, they would have home gardens,
Hmm.
right? Home gardening, and we had bartering also. And then they started selling in front of their home. If you go in these villages, it's linear. A lot of them are linear villages, so they
Hmm.
are along the road. And
Hmm.
and outside of their homes, you would have little tables with the excess fruit, and
Hmm.
all organically grown in their homes for
Hmm.
sale. That still
Hmm.
happens in
Wow.
many rural parts. So these were
Hmm.
enterprising women who
Hmm.
turned to doing things
Hmm.
that would supplement the family income and still
Hmm.
kept their domestic realm intact. They were very strong women, looked
Hmm.
after their family, looked after their in-laws and so on. We don't have the concept even now.
Hmm.
We do have one or two elderly home, but that's not a concept that we have even now. It's not welcome.
Hmm.
So they kept all of that going for us, and then they
What's
slowly
what's not a
went.
concept? I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Which
What's
one is
not a
that?
concept? You said it's not a
Oh, it's not
concept.
a concept to put the elderly in a home.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, it's
Thank
not
God for that.
welcome. Yeah.
Yes, yes,
And so when they started being educated,
yes.
and I must say, we welcome the British education also in that way, that they educated women in
Hmm.
sewing and in
Hmm.
little skills that women was what is to be the good wife. The
Hmm.
Christian principle
Concept
was
of it.
women should be
Yeah,
the good wife.
yeah.
So in the process, women could learn, how to
Hmm.
sew,
Hmm.
and they did a lot of sewing at home. They bought their machine eventually, and cooking, of course, is their style. But many things that they could do,
Hmm.
and they made an income out of
Hmm.
that to supplement. And
Hmm.
and those women
Hmm.
grew. The
Hmm.
family grew into huge multinational. Well, not too big, not multinational, but huge companies
Hmm.
today. And but it's not women alone, it's the men also. The men
Sure.
work together, and women inherited what the men also brought into
Hmm.
it.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for telling us a little more about Trinidad. And I'm very excited at some point to be able to visit and to see those bazaars outside the homes. Can you talk to us about that we discussed a little bit before, about how Indians have received you in India, how Hindus have received you, how easy or not it is for you to mingle with people here? If you sense a hesitation from our side, and why do you think that is? And this is very evident, especially when it comes to rishtas, to finding grooms or brides. I had a friend, she's still a friend, who's of Japanese descent from Curitiba, which is Brazil. So she's Portuguese. She speaks Portuguese and not Japanese. She's 100% ethnically Japanese, and she cannot find a groom, in an arranged way, because it's very difficult. The country of Japan has a similar issue, that if you're born outside, or you're a second or third generation, then somehow you're not 100% Japanese. So they do not, intermarry. So I would like you to talk about this issue a little more that you brought up before.
Well, when it first confronted me, it was in New York with Indians from Guyana and Trinidad and so on. And we began to differentiate. We'd say, I am Indian,
Hmm.
but I'm not Indian.
Hmm.
You would hear that word. And I was, what is Indian? And what is Indian? And then, you see, I'm Indian. They still claim their identity. You can't take that away from us. We are Indian, but we are not Indian. So it means referring to those of the new generations from India. And they've always looked down on us. We are called coolies also because
Even now.
yeah. Well, coolie is a banned word in
Yes,
Trinidad and Tobago
people should
as
know
the N
that.
word. Yeah, as the
Yes.
N word. It's banned. It's derogatory. The British called us that, and so you
Hmm.
will still find some of the more some Indians doing that. I remember when I came to India, I was like 19 years old,
Hmm.
and I remember the customs officer and so on would ask me, "Do you drink alcohol?"
Oh.
Yeah, and they had the impression
That
that people
anybody from the
live.
West. Hmm.
Just like I had my imagination of India, they had an
Hmm.
imagination of the Western world that, oh,
Hmm.
yeah, we drink alcohol
And
and
perhaps you were in a dress or a skirt or a frock, and that would have
yeah, yes, in
ruined
those
what.
days, or jeans or
Yes,
something. But
yes.
yeah, but now it doesn't make a difference. Now, oh my God, now I am better dressed, even in my
Yes.
Western wear, than
Yes.
some of the
But
women.
is the
And I
acceptance
just say
better?
boldly. Huh?
Is the acceptance better? Is there more interaction? Do you think that that looking down that you talked about, has that gone, or is it still there in pockets? And
I
do
would
you
say
say
it's gone. It's gone in institutions
okay?
associated. Say like the GoPio, Global Organization of People of Indian Origin. It's
Mhm.
fairly gone. I remember '89. GoPio had started. I was at the very first one in New York.
Mm,
I was wearing a sari, and this lady
mm,
came up to me from India, and she says,
mm.
"Why are you wearing my dress?"
What?
Yeah, and she was of the diaspora group. So you still have these. I think they were afraid to lose what they had also in the big
Mm,
pot. Now there's a big
mm.
pot. We are all in it. They want to keep, but you can't do that anymore. Now the mixture is across the board.
Oh
So I
God.
think yeah, that loss we feel a little closer now. Only if you're working together,
Huh.
if there's proximity and you get to know the
Yes.
other person, you're going to
Yes.
school. For
Yes.
example, at school, you make friends. And I
Hmm.
think those are lasting relationships that break that,
Stereotypes,
yes,
prejudices.
yes. So if
But
you
how
don't
best
know
to
the
know
other
one
person,
another, Indrani ji? Because Trinidad is so far away, we are so far away, whether it's Guyana or Fiji, unless one is in the US or some other, common
yes,
country,
yeah.
like the second, what is called the what wave, the second wave of, there's a term for it, right? The diaspora, which is not
Second
like a
migration,
Western.
yeah, the second
Yeah,
migration.
second migration. So unless it's that, how would Indians from India get to know the Girmintia diaspora better? What is do you think tourism is a good way to start to get to know the people better? Or what would you suggest?
Well, we've been coming to India since the I would say, 70s. I don't know
Mhm.
the 60s, but 70s.
Mhm.
The pundits used to have, they did yatra. They would come, as yatris. So
Yes.
we did have groups that would be coming from Trinidad, Guyana, New York as yatris. So people knew us. And even then, we are coming on a whole yatra. And the older women would wear the long dresses because they couldn't, dress like
Nisarian, yeah.
the sari is tedious to move around
Yes.
with, and or they were not accustomed wearing shalwar and so on.
Yes.
So they'll wear their dress and their orhani. I don't know if you remember that. In North India, they have the orhani, what we call
Yes.
orhani.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Ordini. Yes. Yes,
Uh,
Ordini. Oh, the dress and a Ordini. Really?
yes, yes, yes.
Oh,
Short dress and the orhani, the older women.
how interesting.
Yeah,
Acha.
but the dress being under the knee, of course, for
Of
them,
course.
mid calf.
Huh.
Uh, so it evolved from what we call a gangri.
Huh.
Gangri in the North India was a long skirt.
Ha ha ha.
So
Like
that
like
long
a
skirt,
ghagra, which is yeah, which is like a little above the ankle because they have to work
yeah,
in the fields.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then you had the little choli, and you had this
Ah,
dupatta going
yes,
around.
yes, yes.
They had, and then
Yes.
that became shorter, and it became
A
an
dress, like a
object
made-to-me
of
dress.
it became an object of style and dress.
Ah.
The
Ah.
orani had to match the rest of the
Oh,
dress, and it
oh.
had to have little what rhinestones, little fancy stuff on it. So it
Chumki
became
chumki la.
it evolved into a style
Yes.
eventually.
Yes, yes. So this is so wonderful to hear, Indrani ji. Coming to the last question, I'm really enjoying it, but we must let you go also. And the last question would be something fairly simple, but everybody would want to know: cricket and food. So that
Yes.
probably binds us all together: Bollywood, cricket, food, even though it's superficial, apart from Sanatana Dharma. But tell us a little about, about the cricket scene in Trinidad, and food wise, did you get all the spices? Could you cook the same things that your ancestors cooked? Or when your ancestors came, was it easy for them to cook the same recipes? And how did you, manage? And what happens now? Like, what's the food scene like?
Yeah, well, in those early days, you didn't get too many of the spices they were
Hmm.
accustomed to. So they had to adjust, but they were already accustomed to simple food, North
Hmm.
Indian simple food that I still see now in Bihar. And so I said, but
Okay.
that's the exact way we cook it.
Dal
And
chawal.
yeah, and the sabji is made like we do, pretty simple.
Ah,
Too much of the spices was not known.
hmm.
Uh, and I remember as a child eating at my aunt's place far away rice and mar. We call mar the
Acha.
water when you drain the rice, when you boil the
Huh,
rice.
huh, huh. The starch, that is. Yes, yes.
Yes, and
Yes.
with piece of achar. Oh my God,
Yes.
that was so
Very
tasty in those
healthy.
days.
Yes.
That kind of rice, not ordinary rice, the one
Yes.
that's planted and grown. So we didn't get too much of that. The food remained fairly similar, and we have evolved what you call the dal puri now.
Hmm.
I've seen it in some parts, and I've had it too in Banaras. But though here it's smaller, ours
Hmm.
has become bigger, and it is
Okay,
now
so it's much more.
wrapped.
Oh,
It's become like a wrap, in America, what
oh,
you call the
Valpuri
wrap.
wrap? Oh, in a
Yeah,
bun,
and
like
in
bread?
between they put the sabji in between, and
Oh,
then they wrap around the four corners. So
oh,
you eat it like a sandwich.
lovely. Okay.
So it's
We can
very
try making
popular. It's
that. Okay,
very
dal
popular. And
puri.
then
Okay.
yes, it's evolved into a national food actually in Trinidad. And
Oh,
then we have the bara, what we call the doubles is the most popular street food, and that
uh-huh.
is made. It's a little bara with chana on top of it, and we
Okay.
have doubles now. Another bara will go on top of it,
Yeah.
and so we have evolved that kind of street food. I've not seen it in India. As a kid, I remember eating one bara with
Uh-huh.
chana at the top, but they tell
Okay.
me North India it's there.
Acha.
So yeah, and now our food is very cosmopolitan.
Yes.
The wider community enjoys our food, and we enjoy the wider,
Hmm.
and everybody, it's a mix of what to your own taste. And
Yes.
now, of
Food
course, you
brings
get
everybody together.
all the
Okay.
spices coming from India. I mean, I brought my mother to India, and she
Huh.
could not eat the food at all.
It's very spicy for her.
And I'm giving her all the fancy rich foods. No way. Paneer,
Yes.
vagira, vagira. No way. She wanted the simpler food. Now the young people are into all these spices.
Yes. Yes. What about cricket in Raniji? Were you ever a
Yeah,
fan or?
cricket is cricket is in the blood of every Indian.
Okay.
We must say thanks to the British for that, right? The British gave us some good things, but we also lost a lot.
Yes.
They should give us reparations for what we've lost. Uh,
And we should reclaim what is ours, starting with
yeah,
our minds to think like
yes.
a Bharatiya.
Yeah. See,
Yes.
ours is not a culture that's going to demand reparation in money, but you could fund scholarships. You could do things to
Hmm.
help, to overcome that.
Make
And
up.
I like that about my culture. It's not saying I want so many trillion dollars because you
Hmm.
stole it. Let's
Hmm.
do something, intangible
Positive.
that is
Yes.
tangible as well. But
Yes.
coming to the cricket, we were all supporters of India
Uh-huh.
until
Oh.
I would say my generation.
Uh-huh.
um, we'd all the Indians would be on one side of the oval, and that is all for India. So of
Oh.
course the other communities didn't like it, but
Of course.
that
Yes.
has changed lately. Like I would support both India and West Indies,
Mm-hmm.
but I wouldn't want India to be beaten too badly. But in the end, I want West Indies to win. That's where we reach now. That yeah, we support
Yeah.
West Indies, but we still love India.
Also because I think West Indies, so after maybe the independence in Trinidad and things opened up for Hindus, there was more loyalty. But because before that, it was more like a colonial rule. So you're very clearly on India's side. So that's understandable. So
Yeah, but
anything else?
even the emotional feeling in
Yes.
India is still
Yes.
there.
Yes.
It's still
How
what is
beautiful to
India?
hear.
We still I remember one of your cricketers came very very early. Oh, one of them got married in Trinidad also. He came very
Oh,
early and he said to us, "You all are not Hindus."
oh,
I can't remember his name, but I
you
met,
should please tell
I
us.
was I was getting interviews with journalists on my PhD, and
Uh-huh.
Rajdeep Sardesai, who is so very, very busy,
Uh,
gave me an interview. He granted me an interview, and he said to me, "It's only because of my father, who was this cricketer who been to Trinidad so many
oh,
times." So Rajdeep recognized the Trinidad connection also via
oh,
cricket and his dad.
okay. Good to know that. Anything else you would like to tell us, Indrani ji, before we let you go?
Oh, well, uh, the diaspora, Indians have to learn this word diaspora and
Hmm.
begin to reach out in a global sense, stop being too internal,
Insular. Yeah.
inside anymore, and to open up to a world that is yours. Didn't we say the whole world, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam? We want to
Yes.
make this whole world as one family. But still, there are too many restrictions in the Hindu camp, which prevent
Okay.
I would
Okay.
find Christians and even Muslims more open
Mm.
to acceptance
Mm.
than fellow Hindus. And I
That will
don't
change.
understand. I
Yeah.
can't figure it out yet.
Okay. Please let us know how that can change and what we can do to enable more, fostering of relationships with the diaspora Hindus. And बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद Indrani ji for your wonderful insights. Look forward to speaking to you again. Wishing you a very happy Gregorian New Year 2025. Ram Ram.
Ram Ram Sitaram Namaste. Thank you so much.
Namaste ji. बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद.